Okay, so Dylan Cummings here for Rollt.Magazin, here with Oscar Knight. Oscar, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, mate.
Good. Oscar is a GB Academy player in contention for the GB Junior squad, the under-22 squad. He is a player for the Plymouth Raiders in the British Wheelchair Basketball National League. I believe, are you in Division 2 still, or Division 1?
We finished second, but obviously with the season cutting short, we might go up, we might not. It's kind of a bit in question at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, so Oscar is a player for the Plymouth Raiders. He's also sponsored by Max Wheelchairs, which are the UK partner of Performax in the UK. He was last year's BWB Junior of the Year. He won gold in that tournament with Southwest at the Junior Championships. Now, before we start with this interview, there'll be a few people out there wondering why we're interviewing this kid. But at the end of the day, Oscar has come forward and is willing to speak about this. He has complex regional pain syndrome, the same as George Bates and the same as some other international athletes that have been outclassed. And he's concerned about the situation. So therefore, we have given him a platform to voice his concerns. With that being said, Oscar, if you could please summarise how you feel about the situation and why you feel this way.
It's, in my opinion, I think the IPC haven't really done, the best sort of thing with this new classification thing, because it doesn't look great for them at all, because there's so many people against this, and it's just I disagree with it, like the large majority of the wheelchair basketball world and Paralympic world.
Yeah, and what would you say to those who think that it's IWBF's mishandling of the situation?
You could partly sort of say they mishandled it, but because obviously the originally it was meant to be in 2015 with the whole sort of when it first sort of came about, and obviously they stalled it because they very much believe in their classification thing. So you could kind of say that IWF should have sorted it out between 2015 and now, but at the same time they've kind of been forced into it because the IPC said that, if you don't abide by our rules, you're not going to be in the Paralympics. So that kind of is a bit of a tough choice for them to make, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And then just following on from that, can you, obviously, as mentioned before, you have complex regional pain syndrome. Can you explain how you acquired that disability and how it affects you in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, so basically it all started when I was about 5 years old, and I fell down a flight of stairs in my primary school, and basically all of that sort of force went straight into my right knee, which then progressed into what was believed to be complex regional pain syndrome. But at the time, medical professionals didn't know what I had. So it kind of, what happened is there's sort of a 6-month period with CRPS where it can get better with physio, and they didn't know what was wrong with my knee for 2-3 years. So basically beyond that, it then spread from my right knee down to both my feet, sort of from the shin down. And it pretty much, that was when I was about 9-10 years old. And from then forward, I've gone through multiple rehabs to try and get better, but they resulted in relapses, and I never really got back to where I was, because I obviously used to play football. I was a really active sort of young boy, and as soon as this hit me, it kind of set me back a long way. And then obviously I found wheelchair basketball and life got a lot better.
Yeah, and you say, as a quote there, you say you found wheelchair basketball and life got a lot better. So if you could explain, obviously there's a potential that people with CRPS might not have the opportunity to play at the highest level, that be the Paralympic Games. Can you explain how you would feel if that opportunity got taken away from you?
I'd be heartbroken, because like all the other athletes who have been taken off of it, who are already in the Paralympic squad, you don't, like, sort of growing up like watching wheelchair basketball, playing it. You don't sort of, it's great winning all the other things, but everybody wants to win a gold medal at the Paralympics, and to have that completely taken away from you is just completely heartbreaking. You just
and like a lot of I've interviewed a lot of athletes about this, and they almost seem to be at a loss for words as to where they would go next if they've been told by a medical professional that they've, or for example, if they've been, like in your case, they didn't know what was, sorry to phrase it so bluntly, but they didn't know what was wrong with you.
Yeah.
And then obviously it spread, and because it spread, you can no longer play able-bodied sports. So to then be told that you can't play disability sports, it's almost as if, like, where do they expect you to go next?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, to my understanding, you've had an interview with the newspaper The Sun about this. Is that correct? Is it the local Sun or the national Sun? No.
It was meant to be the National Sun, but they've not actually put it in the paper yet. But luckily, we've got a friend who's like a photographer who sort of knows the newspaper companies quite well. So hopefully, we'll be able to get it in another newspaper. And it was the article was just sort of about, how could it be possible that somebody like me who can't walk, and obviously with George using a crutch, stuff, like I can't walk at all. I have contractures. I lose my balance as soon as I stand. I can't wait there. And how they could possibly say that you can't be internationally classified because your impairments have come from CRPS. It's just completely. I know you don't like to use the word discrimination because obviously you're neutral, but in my eyes, it's completely discriminatory. Yeah.
I mean, that's certainly the opinion that a lot of the wheelchair basketball community have displayed recently. My next question I've got for you is, so obviously, it's fair to say that disability is a fairly subjective thing. So what you define as a disability or what someone else defines as a disability is clearly not the same as the case as with this case. Like the IPC have a specific definition of disability. So, do you agree that disability is subjective?
It's definitely subjective, and I think that's the trouble with these uneligible sort of disabilities as well, because obviously they're kind of classed as invisible disabilities. That's what CRPS is kind of classed as, and I think the big problem with it, with the uneligible ones being sort of what the word was used, I can't remember the word, but basically being sort of in protest because it's invisible. I think a lot of that kind of stemmed from the experience I had growing up with like doctor appointments and stuff. You sort of say, I don't know why, but my knee's not, it hurts, and I don't know why. They're not very, if they don't know what it is, or if they can't sort of see it, they sort of struggle to say what to do, sort of thing. So I had a lot of problems with physios and stuff who said that it was all in my head, and I need psychology, I needed to look at their knees, I needed to I had a lot of problems with that. And I think when it comes to defining disability with whatever the IPC uses, that is it's you can't really define it because it's so widespread. There's so many different types of impairments, illnesses. You can't put it into one definition.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that you say that, like that you say that when you went to doctors, like if they couldn't figure out what it was, that they're sort of at a loss for words, and it's it's hard to say, but for doctors in the UK certainly, but so sorry mate, there's a lot of questions here. Following on from that, like argument that I had a chat with Troy Sachs the other day, and Troy was saying that the IPC they base it off the medical model of disability, whereas IWBF and wheelchair basketball, they've always done a sort of functional classification system rather than base it off the medical model. Because with the functional classification, you can cover a wider range of disabilities / impairments. With that being said, the IPC classification code has been agreed upon by over 200 Paralympic sports governing bodies. Why do you think the code has been so universally agreed upon?
Sorry, you cut out a bit, but I think I got the end of that. Why is it so, like, why has everybody sort of accepted it? Was that the...
Yeah, so it's been agreed upon by over 200 Paralympic governing bodies. So, why do you think the code has been so universally agreed upon?
Well, partly with that, I'm pretty sure it's only 9 athletes that have been affected out of however many there are going to the Paralympics. So I think that's why a lot of teams have probably accepted it, because they don't have a player that's been affected. And that's what's so annoying about this whole situation. It's such a small group of people that it could just be dealt with quite easily with sort of, like, I know they've probably all had individual classifications, sort of sent their medical work and stuff, but that it's, like I say, disability isn't, it can't be put down to that definition. It can't be put down to what it says in your medical thing, because at the end of the day, whether it's pain, whether it's, you've got cerebral palsy, you still get these impairments, and you still struggle to, like, I struggle to walk with the impairments I get from CRPS, but you just can't put it down to what you see on a medical document. You need to do in my opinion, what IWBF do, and a proper assessment where they sort of look at your legs sort of thing, look at your range of movement, and actually watch you properly in a game to sort of make their decision. And you bring up some very good points there, but I think you misinterpreted the question. So, did I?
But you made some good points, mate. So that's why I'll let you continue. So, when I mean by 200 Paralympic sports governing bodies, I'm not just talking about wheelchair basketball. So, this code, obviously, there's several other sports at the Paralympic Games. So, this code has been agreed upon by, like I say, 200 governing bodies for every sport at the Paralympics. So why do you think it's been agreed upon by them?
I didn't. Yeah, I definitely misinterpreted the question. You know what? I'm not actually too sure, because that doesn't make sense to me, because I know there's been quite a lot of people affected in, like, tennis and stuff, like Alfie Hewitt, who's got like a hip problem, doesn't he? And that he's sort of got sent out of that. But I don't, that's beyond me. I have no idea why they wouldn't accept that, or why they would, sorry.
Okay, that's no worries, mate. We'll move on to the next question. So we've talked on the subjectiveness of disability. So continuing on with that, you could argue that disability should not be split into 10 subjective categories. However, there is no denying that the IPC code covers a wide range, although not all, of disabilities. In your opinion, why should a wider range of disabilities be considered to be added to the code?
From what I've heard, it's more like, obviously a wider range of disabilities should be added, but it's more because, like, obviously I've listened to some podcasts that George has done, and obviously you interviewed Phil, and it sounds like that they've acknowledged that he's got a disability and he's got these impairments, but they're not allowing that, because it comes from a pain condition, they're not allowing it. And I think it's more, that's the problem. It's a certain, those ineligible disabilities are being discriminated against because of how you got those impairments, more than, it shouldn't be that disability should be added. It should just be like, obviously you're disabled, you're going to get an impairment sort of thing. So I think it should solely be sort of judged on the person's impairment more than their disability.
Oh, yeah, and it's very interesting that you say that, because this leads me on to my next questions. Right, so apologies, these are quite long-winded. So there is there is no denying that certain health conditions can lead to permanent physical impairment. Like, for example, CRPS is legally and lawfully listed as a health condition. It's not legally and lawfully listed as a disability, which is the point you alluded to. Is the reason why you think that these it's being discriminated against, in your words. So, for example, so health conditions can lead to permanent physical impairments. However, other health conditions can leave people feeling fine. It's very much a specific case-by-case basis. For example, your case is different to George's. George's case will be different to Dagmar van Hint from the Netherlands, who also has CRPS. With that being said, in your opinion, why should the IPC at least take into consideration the health conditions that can cause permanent physical impairments?
Well, it's from what I've because I've obviously been through rehab with other people with what I've got as well, and it's with CRPS. It's in particular, it's very much based on sort of percentage. So when I went to Great Ormond Street, I was told that their sort of statistics was you got a 97% chance of walking out of there with no pain, and then a 3% chance of just getting worse, sort of thing. And that's what I think they've got to take into consideration, that CRPS and all these other illnesses can either go one way or the other, and that's why the IPC should do individual classified sort of, instead of just sending off medical documents saying that you can't weight bear, you've got muscle deterioration. They should get their sort of classifiers, because I'm pretty sure they're run by a few medical professionals as well. So get them to sort of look in person and obviously that's going to be hard in these times because of Corona, but I think it's got to be more of a visual thing and looking at it rather than just on a piece of paper.
Yeah. It's you make another great point there. Now I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I'm sorry to do this, but I feel that it's worth looking into this. So you said that there are some times where CRPS can leave people permanently wheelchair bound, like in the case of yourself. Some people will need a crutch. And some people can completely recover from it. Now, do you think that those who are completely recovered from it should be eligible to compete or be given an opportunity to compete at the highest level, i.e. the Paralympics? Or do you think it should only be for those who are permanently physically... Do you think it should only be for those who are left with a physical impairment due to CRPS?
Well, obviously watching your interview with Joey Johnson as well, he made a point that wheelchair basketball should just be a sport, not a disability sport. It should just be an all-round sport. And I'm not opposed by that at all, but what should happen with sort of disabilities that might get better, might get worse, sort of thing, is again, it should just be an individually classified. So for example, say if George, obviously his condition is getting worse, but say if you're seeing improvement, he gets let's say towards the next Paralympics and not Tokyo, the one after, and he's seen improvement, he goes in for another classification sort of look at with physios and stuff, and they sort of make the point from there. But what shouldn't happen from that is, because I've heard a lot of cases, there was a woman in wheelchair archery who she had CRPS and she got deemed ineligible and all her medals got taken away, and that's completely wrong. So if that were to happen, it should be done properly with should be physically checked over again to see if there's improvement, see if it's worsened. And from that, the decision should be made from there. But with Joey saying it should be just a sport, I mean, why not? Completely inclusive. So if the people who were to get better could still play in it as a 5. So I can't see why that wouldn't be a good option.
Yeah, and so before I move on to your point you made about Joey's interview, just to get some clarification, so you think people that have these health conditions that lead to physical permanent impairments should be regularly reviewed to see if it gets better or worse?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, with IWBF's classification sort of thing, they'll have like classifiers at tournaments, like, so sort of looking at you, and like I've been reclassified from a 2.5 to a 3.5. So it could very much be that as well. You could be somebody sort of watching and sort of saying, okay, he's seen it, it seems a lot, sort of whatever it might be, and they might just say, it can be sort of do a little checkup on you like they do over here, and IWF based tournaments, and just sort of basically get checked up on every sort of before a big tournament or something, to see if there's been improvement, or to see if there's been less improvement, you might have got worse.
Yeah, and then just following on from the previous point you made, obviously you've watched the interview I've done with Joy. I think it's fair to say that you brought up a controversial point. Now, following on from that, there is no denying that wheelchair basketball is an inclusive sport. However, if we make it inclusive at the Paralympic level, and, for example, let able-bodied people play, then it will lose its status as a Paralympic sport. And if this happened, it would lose its Paralympic funding. So how would you feel about this if it lost its funding?
You see, that's where I kind of look at it and think maybe it shouldn't, because it might lose funding. But wheelchair basketball is such a great sport that it could definitely quite easily get funding from somewhere else, whether it's, obviously IPC is the Paralympic Committee, so if it went into just the normal Olympics, they'll get funding from there maybe, or, I'm not like completely in tune with what sort of money kind of, but yeah, if it were to not become a Paralympic sport and it would lose its money, that wouldn't be very helpful. So obviously you've got to take that into consideration. Yeah.
And how would you feel if that was the case, if it did lose its Paralympic status?
It obviously wouldn't be great, because the whole point of sort of Paralympics, like everybody sort of my age and a little bit below, we've all watched, Rio and even 2012. There's bits of that and stuff on YouTube, and you want to be playing there. It's just, it would be pretty bad if it was to lose its Paralympic status. But if it were to go to an Olympic status instead, it might even do even better for the sport. You just don't really know. And obviously I don't have the inside track on that kind of thing.
Okay, and then yes. So an argument against the points you've made today, and again, sorry to put you on the spot, but obviously you mentioned that like the Paralympics is the pinnacle, and like it's what is everyone's goal is to play at or every wheelchair basketball player's goal is to play at the Paralympics. However, some would argue that if you're able to make a living from the sport, you're not at a loss. And I don't know if you saw, but IWBF Europe announced that players deemed non-eligible by the IPC are still eligible to play in Eurocup. And again, some would argue that if you're able to make a living, you're not at a disadvantage. What would you say in response to this?
It's a valid point, but why should someone like George and all the other players be taken out of their squads and not put down a level, because obviously the level at sort of Eurocup and sort of like Spanish leagues and stuff is a really high level, but why for all, like, they've worked towards it, they've literally put their heart and soul into training and getting into the squad and keeping their spot, why should they have to be removed and then sort of said, it's, you can't play Paralympics, but you can still play at this level? And it's just not good, in my opinion. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, because an argument against it is, for example, like, I don't know, like imagine you're starting out wheelchair basketball again, and you come into a session, and I don't know, like Colin Flounders comes up and talks to you and says, oh yeah, you can play, but you can't play at the Paralympics level. Because you can't play at the highest level, what's stopping you from just turning around and not trying? So I suppose, yeah, that's another argument.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it's going to drive sort of young people away who are just sort of coming into the sport, because that they've probably, like what I hear a lot from sort of people my age and stuff, they've got their sort of inspiration from 2012 when the Olympics was in London. So everybody pretty much got their inspiration from there, and going forward in their career, they're going to want to play at a Paralympics in their future time, because that's how they originally got into it. So if a young kid was watching Paralympics and he was like, oh, I want to start playing wheelchair basketball, and he goes there, he's got CRPS, and his coach is like, oh, you can still play at a high level of wheelchair basketball, but you can't play at Paralympics. He's more than likely probably just gonna not, like you say, not try and not even attempt basketball.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that any day we turn anyone away from the sport, be that at any level, it's a sad day for the sport.
Yeah.
Right. So that brings me on to that final question. So, if you had the chance to go to the IPC offices and speak to the head of the IPC face to face, first of all, what would you say to them, and how would you put forward an argument to get them to consider changing their classification code?
Wow, like what a lot of the other athletes have been saying, and like what George has been saying, that his goal is to try and sort of say, can we at least play this Tokyo coming up, because they're in the squad already, and to be kicked out of it. And he used an example that like a tennis player, I think it might have even been Alfie Hewitt, was allowed to go even though he's deemed ineligible. So I think that's the point he's sort of trying to get across to them. But obviously to be that first sort of step would be to make sure they can play at the Paralympics they've worked for. And then after that, so obviously look to be getting it changed. But I think, like going back to my point, sort of saying how I got treated medically by, people sort of not knowing what I was saying, it was in my head. I think that's quite a lot of the case for these sort of pain conditions and these invisible illnesses. I think when it comes to sort of doctors and physios, they need not like education, but because obviously they know probably quite a lot about it, but they need to be a bit more, they need to talk to people with these disabilities or pain conditions, and sort of have a chat with them, sort of say what's happened in their life, how, for example, I've not been able to walk after being able to play football in my early life. And I think it's just got to be dealt with a lot better, just instead of you've got a pain condition, you've got hypermobility, you've got this, you're just not allowed, no matter what, whether you can't walk or, you've got an impairment, you just still can't do it. It just needs to be, like I say, individually classified. And if you can't play an able-bodied sport, you have to be able to play wheelchair sport at a high level. Like, for example, that Australian lady who used to play stand-up and she had a career-ending injury. Like, that's one dream already gone, and she's just come into wheelchair basketball again, and she's, probably one of the best players in the world on the women's side. And to have that taken away again, like even saying they've got nowhere else to go, sort of thing. Yeah,
and like for the example we used there, Annabelle Lindsay, it is crushing to not only have an able-bodied sporting career injury, but then also to be told that she's non-eligible to play disability sport. It is very crushing for someone like her. So just to get clarification on your point, I think it's fair to say a lot of the frustrations that people are having is that, for example, if it's not listed as illegally and lawfully listed as a disability, then from what it seems like, the IPC don't want to hear about it. Or no, not that they don't want to hear about it, but like they acknowledge, like you say, they acknowledge they have this impairment, but it doesn't, because it doesn't fit within their code. They say they can't compete. Sorry, that was a bad choice of words, Ali.
It's all right.
So, and like you said, it's very interesting that you compare it to like you said earlier, that if the doctors don't know what's wrong with you, then they don't really know what advice to give you. So it seems like that's very much the case with IPC. So an argument or a solution that someone put forward to me, who I'm going to leave unnamed, is that they think that the IPC should add in a subclause that states that if someone has a legally or lawfully a health condition, that it should be on the athlete to prove how that health condition impairs them, and then present that evidence to the IPC. What would you say? Would you agree with this, and what would you say about this?
I definitely agree with that, but I think the problem I've got, because I read through the code as well, and I see a lot of contradictions within it, like which says if you have osteoarthritis, it's non-classifiable, but if you develop impairments from that arthritis, you can potentially be classified and sort of sent to the board and see. And why is that not the case for CRPS? Hypermobility, fibromyalgia, all these sort of ineligible things. It says pretty sure it's like underneath something with an asterisk next to it, so it's quite high. It's quite easy to miss. But it said if you have osteoarthritis and you develop impairments from it, it's a possibility you can be classified. But if it's from a pain condition, CRPS, hypermobility, you're not allowed. So I think it's got to be rewritten without these sort of mini contradictions which can confuse some athletes.
Yeah, and just going back to what we said, it just seems very categorical. Like if you don't fit into a certain category, it's not a case of right. Well, we'll hold on. We'll hear your story here. It's more of a case of if you don't fit into this category, you're out, which a lot of people would deem unfair.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, my mic was muted. That's all the questions I have for you today. But is there have you got any final thoughts? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I mean, I don't think I have. No, I don't think I do. I mean, I could sort of bring up amputation as a last point when it comes to CRPS, because I think a lot of people sort of misunderstand sort of CRPS it's a medical option you can go down to chop off your legs. So obviously, like George said in a recent podcast, like newspapers have slightly, not glamorized it, but they've sort of said to sell their story. So amputation is an actual medical option you can go down to basically sort it out. So he's not just doing it to continue on his sport. It's something you can medically choose when having CRPS.
Yeah, and like you said, the mainstream media have they've tried to go and sensationalize the story, as they do with many things in the mainstream media, and that's where like Rollt, we like to be like, because obviously we know the community, and we know how patronizing it is when somebody sensationalizes disability. Oh, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I just came back in now. Yeah,
no worries. But yeah, Oscar, I'd like to thank you very much for your time, and it's been really good. Like I've said many times before, if anyone wants to come forward and speak about this issue, you're more than welcome to. Just message me. But Oscar, once again, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.